Hi there. Again, it was quite a while since last time, but um, yeah. So where should I begin? um, I'm harping on this very much about rationality and rational addressing what you do in your day and so forth. And I've been considering again these how I should handle how I because it's obviously important to be sort of sharp in your mind. I mean, if you don't sleep well and so forth. And I've figured that I heard somewhere that your sleep patterns are like your natural way to sleep is for some people to sleep like they're night owls, and that it's actually natural for the circadian rhythm, and it's quite fits quite well with the evolutionary perspective that you should sleep. That some people are programmed to not sleep at night because it's an evolutionary advantage to be guardians of the fire or something like that. And that we are not all programmed to sleep well at all at the same periods during the 24 hours. And so I tried to come up with because I realized I wasn't, when I did one type of a nootropic, also coffee and those kind of things, I realized I never really get, like, the thing that it got worse and worse the more I used them. And it's actually said in the instruction for this nootropic that this product will not help you if you don't sleep right. And maybe it is even the case that because they're quite altruistic and minded, those who make these products, they don't say it explicitly, but it could be the case that it's meant to make you feel bad if you use it when you're tired, or it's just a side consequence, and that happens. And that seems to but anyway, it's, yeah. So when I've despite, like, but because I try to sort of get a better routine and get up somewhat earlier, not early at all, but somewhat earlier. But so even though I was tired during the day and night, and I slept sufficiently well, I was still, despite like sleeping quite okay for a while, I was still tired when I got up. And I tried to reverse this, so I tried to get to bed earlier, because I always feel like I think I mentioned this last time, that I always feel like it's nice to get up in the morning so that you can get things done. And I also experimented with I think I told this earlier, that I before this tried to sort of be up to 12, maybe midnight, because that's sort of my natural thing. But I stopped it because it felt as if day becomes too late, and it's like too late if you get up at, I don't know, 9. It feels like the day is just, it's not anything left of the day really. But and I don't know how much, if you really can sort of, like, when I test now to not do that and get up earlier and go to bed earlier. I just did it for well, getting to bed early which is only this night, and I don't know if I should continue. To be certain, I could continue like doing this, go to bed early and get up early, and see if I get used to that. But um, at the same time, I found that, well, I can't know for sure. I could test it for a while, and I've heard some people say that it takes months to change your sort of circadian rhythm, and so maybe the easier approach is to, and that's why I'm testing this again, to just live with the fact that it might feel as if that much left of the day when I get up at 9, but actually test that or something like that, to stay up somewhat earlier and go to bed when I'm tired just. And so then, because it seems like I just want to be left at bed when the time hits 7, and I found that I can get up if I'm super tired. It's no problem, like in just getting over it, if I knew it was right. I tried it, and I actually did it too much earlier in my life. I sort of violated and I have had intense, really want us to stay in bed, and I don't know that's true for many people, but considering that how much I stressed, and in addition to that, try to be an elite athlete, or on my way to being that, you often need more sleep. And so, and I get my 8 hours, that's something, but you probably need even more, because I slept extremely good during those 8 hours and was extremely tired when I got up. And I think it would have been much more sharp if I slept 30 to 60 minutes more. But so I can get over that if I need to. But I found that when I do this, even if I've been to bed especially during the morning, if I'm getting to bed at 10, say, and I get up at 7, 9 hours later, I still, even though I've slept quite well, I'm still really tired. And at least when I'm on nootropics, my brain just does not work. That's what really happened last week. My brain seems to really need those hours between 7 and 9. And if my theory is correct, that it's more because I can't sleep, like, that's why I try to get back to bed at 9 and get up at sort of, but I couldn't sleep then, and maybe I had to give it more time than that, but I think it would be easier to just stay up a little longer and use those hours between 7 and 9, because that seems to be the hours that I really can sleep well, and could it be again associated with the time at the day, and so, and I just happened to sleep well at that time and recovered well at that time. And you could argue whether it's the light, and is it really important that where on the day it is, and I don't know. I just can just experiment, and I think I will do that. So today I will be up a little longer, as I did for a while, tested earlier but stopped. But I think I had to try it again. And unfortunately I haven't done research on, I've forgotten what made me stop it, but I think it was something that the day just disappeared. And if I'm unfortunate, it might be the case that I have sort of like teenagers have, they have a longer daily rhythm than 24 hours, so it just wants to get longer and longer. You get earlier and later, and so forth. I hope it won't happen, but we will see, because it might be that it's only my natural rhythm is later on the hour or on the day. We'll see. But I will at least I'll see how I handle it, but I won't I won't get up if I'm tired. That's my sort of basic rule, and then whatever happens. And I will make sure to make it sufficiently dark. Say, I don't know, from 8 o'clock at least, somewhat darker at least, and just see what happens. I mean, I'm not sure, but because you can still manipulate yourself to have really good light until 12, and you won't be tired anyway because of the light. So I'll see how I'll handle that. But apart from that, I have to be honest that the last couple of days have been somewhat tougher than earlier, and I think it's because I cut down quite much of caffeine. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking what should I speak about, because this is not what do I want to get out of this video lesson. And I think like the reason I'm doing it is because of it was a long time since the last time. I would like to study academic models, but I'm somewhat, I figured I haven't done this too, so I have to, and sort of since I've realized that I get up somewhat late and had to do a paper for a course I'm in. I couldn't do economics as I wanted to, just get over that. But yesterday I did sort of 3.5 or 4.5, or 1.5 times 3, 4.5 hours actually. And so that was great. That I actually accomplished that, but I also but the day also felt quite short because I went to bed quite early and did watched some series, actually, TV series, and I'll see how that ends up. But earlier I've said that the social component is probably quite important, but hard to know how important. So I figured that a reward would be good on the later hours or during the day, and yeah, we'll see how that, if I'll continue with it, because 2 hours is still quite much, and I had schedules. If I get up, this was for my getting up early routine, then I would have been made 4 hours at 4 p.m. at the day, and 4 hours academic models, and before that I've done my other routines, such as studying for my course and doing some repetition of earlier knowledge and other stuff, meditation and so forth. But then at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. I could do really whatever I wanted to do, like sort of this thing, and this is actually at that time during the day today. But or at least soon, but I haven't done any academic models because I get up late, and I had to study some extra because the papers I'm supposed to get in tomorrow, and I had a call, and my mother called, and yeah, that was it, I guess. So I lost 4 hours of that, and what I'm thinking is that, to be honest, I have a sense of guilt for not doing it. But I also realize that that's a good thing to notice. And the next question is, and also another thing that came up in my mind when I did this paper was that I had, since it's a philosophy course that is connected to physics, it's philosophy of physics. Since it's philosophy, it's kind of sort of hard to know how sort of correct or insightful you are. So, and I had some quite negative thoughts, and this is the hard part. Guilt. That, like, I mean, that's, if the guilt is from, it is a feeling that I think guilt is the right word. It's not exactly guilt, like sort of an action towards a person. Is more of a thinking that you're not doing the right thing, and it's connected, or it's similar to just feeling that you're not good enough. And when I wrote this paper, I had some thoughts that went through my mind, such as, could it be that me struggling to do this in a way that I want to do, or the sort of holes in my reasoning, potential holes, is an indication that I'm not as insightful as I think I am. Like, so that sort of rational or potentially irrational consideration is quite disturbing, because you think, yeah, and sort of that always sort of try to value yourself is something I think we all do, but maybe I over-focused on it, I don't know. But I actually do feel quite certain that an objective perspective of your own capabilities is really important. So I'll always try to navigate that, and so it will be illuminating to. I will go a mathematics course now for the next 4 months, 2 actually, and so that will be quite revealing. In that mathematics is quite correlated to sort of, but it's still like impossible to evaluate. It's also, I haven't done math in like 5 years. No, even. Well, depends on what math really, but so that could be something that's not indicative, and but on the other hand, I heard people say, speaking about learning disabilities, and it's not always sort of some people, well, it's hard to say, even though I might be successful in this or unsuccessful, I can't know for sure how much ability that I have. It's so hard to sufficiently navigate that. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, if I feel that I have a passion for it and really think it's interesting, and I see connections to it, to other areas of knowledge and so forth, and just feels insightful, then I might pursue it. So it's a good test in that respect, see if I enjoy it. But I guess I've never done it at the university level, so we'll see. Or I have, but not pure mathematics. Or it was, yeah, anyway. So yeah, I do find these videos really. I have a hypothesis that I'm testing really right now, and it's if I feel really great when I'm doing them. I happen to, but I can't know for sure. So I'm testing it, and it's good that I haven't done it for a while. And it actually correlates with me not being that happy with my circumstances. It wasn't that bad, but it was a somewhat dip again. And so that will be interesting to see. But I don't know exactly what to talk about, really. Because what I'm thinking is about opportunity cost. What could I do instead? And what would I have done instead? I would have done something on the internet, but I don't think so. I think I would have either doing academic models and economics, or thinking, like writing, really, because I feel somewhat confused about some things. But this is also an opportunity to actually do exactly that. Sort out what is, get a perspective on yourself. And I actually read a book that I got I can show it, Christmas present. Emotions, Learning, and the Brain, exploring the educational implication of affective neuroscience. And I don't know, it's easy to put, I'm always try to sort of compare that to other areas of knowledge and the sort of opportunity cost of learning academic models. But but it's hard to really, that at least, that book argues for, and I could be biased because I thought that was the chapter I sort up. But it said that people who are passive, it depends on what you mean, but like if you passively if you're engaged in something which we usually think is good for learning, you're not triggering the pathways that ingrain things in the long-term memory, in a sense. I'm not sure exactly like that, but they found that people who were just passive and not only consuming information but actually contemplating for themselves was the people who were the persons who well, this is how they put it. People who have a higher activity in the brain, the part of the brain which do the work that is associated with that passive contemplation, those individuals with a higher activity in that area during some laid back situation, those people had, like, for example, higher scores on IQ, and not that only that, also on other tests. If I'm not, I'm not sure what tests, but some correlation with higher ability in some sense, at least. So this sort of passive thinking part seems to be quite important, but I also think that putting an emphasis on that is it's quite compelling to want to make that emphasis, because that would it's an argument for you not, for example, reading a book, which is, like, for me, for example, I prefer thinking oftentimes than reading a book. But I also seen that when I've been thinking things through, especially when I've done it day after day on a specific topic and writing about it, I've felt enormously clear in thought, and I've felt a much stronger conviction really in what I want to do. So, and this video is a part of it, but also just writing about it or thinking about it. Like, for example, I noticed that when walked back and forth like this. I felt, at a point I felt, which is, I noticed I'm not in that state this week, which is an improvement from last week, because then I was sort of tired and distracted. I just wanted to quit the video. This week I'm more melancholic in some sense, but not, probably because of caffeine reduction, but not today though, so that might be why I'm somewhat more positive in this video, although not completely. Yeah, and when I were in that state of sort of tiredness and walked back and forth, just thinking what the heck happens, what I do, I figure after 20 to 30 minutes I was sort of recovered and felt like somewhat motivated, knew what I wanted to do and so forth. One could ask, why doesn't that happen when I do these videos, like at that point? And the answer could be that it's more demanding, I don't know, or that could be that I close my eyes for 5 minutes or so before or after walking back and forth and thinking. But so it's really interesting how we put things together in those states, and it might be the case depending on your genetics, your environment, how much you push yourself, how much you push yourself at the moment, how much you have pushed yourself in your past, many things, and what you're eating. Many things could probably create lesser or higher demand for your system to engage in those type of activities of going back. But since it's been shown to be quite good, I guess, for the brain, it's interesting. But it's also true that emphasis on laid back sort of, and just it's could be quite close to the conviction that some people have, that if the student is just left on their own to do their own thing and explore things, good things will happen. And that's probably not the case, but it really depends on the student, I guess. And it also depends on the intention and what you're striving at, and so it really depends on. But at least it seems to provide clarity of thought and tranquility of mind, which would be the word that Seneca, the Roman philosopher, would name it, tranquility of mind, which is something that I've been closer to get. I've talked about, maybe I mentioned it last time, but I won't go so much into it, but I just figure that rationality and understanding from historical perspective and even evolutionary, sort of, if you contemplate that your insignificance in some sense, which I don't want to overemphasize because I still think that we have a part to play, and I think that we should, but just considering one thing, that there have been so many people before you and live in the world that you're so sort of not important in some sense, and at the same time we're living a time where everything is just perfectly safe in some sense, as long as you avoid drugs and sort of car racing and mountain climbing, and I won't harp on that too much, it's probably very exciting, but as long as you're not exposed yourself to significant threats to survival and so forth, you're still very safe. Nothing will really happen to you in some sense, and that's quite calming. On the other hand, for sure, if you make the wrong decisions, you might be miserable. So that's important for sure, but it's not a threat to your existence, and not you won't be in sort of physical pain at least. And so just thinking that it doesn't really matter that much, but what does matter is that you try to do as much good as you can. You have that moral, I think imperative is the right word, moral imperative. Anyway, so try to rationally address things. That's have provided me some tranquility of mind, sort of understanding your situation, your part, that there are so many other people out there have been in history. This is just a glimpse of time in the perspective of history, and that, it's a big world, and it's long elapses of time, and you're just a part of it. Could be depressing, but I don't know. Anyway, that might be somewhat relevant to speak about. But I sense that there's always, like, this analogy of people on your shoulders speaking sort of good and bad words. I haven't imagined myself having someone like that, but the analogy occurred to me now because I'm always comparing myself, or what would Charlie Munger, I'm harping on him, or on his thoughts, but what would Charlie Munger think of me in this situation, talking about these subjects? And I actually, just to flatter myself a bit, I had a close friend of mine, his sister said, like, about me and a friend, another friend, that you seem to be so wise or something in this. And she said, in this, I always think, but what would you and me and the other guy think in this situation? And it was quite flattering to hear. Can't say I know that much, but it was quite in the same way I use kind of Charlie Munger. Sometimes not really with intention. I'm just feeling like, oh, what would he think about what I'm doing right now? And going back to guilt again. It is a central part of how I think, sort of spotting errors. What should I do when I think I have to be better at taking it a positive, constructive attitude, rather than depressive. I was talking about that earlier, like the only thing to make you progress is addressing your mistakes and what could be possible mistakes, and then go forward. But it's associated with somewhat quite much pain to do that, and you should. But as actually it was Charlie Munger who said something like, I guess it was on this topic, but very similar topics, and he said something like, well, I don't think you will succeed if you don't like the learning process. And so that's the thing, that is the learning process. The process of learning is really to find your mistakes and eliminate them. And that's actually quite revealing. I had to write that down. It's funny how these type of thoughts really come forth when you're talking like this. And it's, I don't sure to say it proves, but it gives an argument for the importance of that type of DM mode, what they called in the book, of default mode being passive and contemplating, as I talked about in that book. So what was I used to write? Munger on. So won't be successful if not like the learning process will be successful, or whatever he said. I don't remember exactly, but something like that. I just shows or gives a calm understanding of the significance of perceiving faults and mistakes as something positive, as long as it is taken as long as it is taken as something to improve rather than to ignore or remain unsolved, something like that. Calm understanding, I want to make in bold, because it's really it's really a tool for sort of if you're feeling in a bad state, to realize that what you're doing is you're actually addressing like sometimes a bad state could just be something, but it's also that sort of your shortcomings and finding them, which is sort of what you're always succeeding or failing at something. You're trying, you're always navigating, and you see the result all the time, day after day. The result is actually just a part of the learning process, and that's. But yeah, so I think that's a good thing to think about. How do I got into that? Yeah, it was something about. It was something about. Yeah, I just said that. It shows how important it is to do this exercise, just thinking things through and so forth. But okay, just a side note. I want to get back to this, but I was want to this side note. I want to get back to, and that is that I think about. No, I forgot it, but it was something about academic models and how to incorporate that into life, and how I could do that better, and not just studying, but maybe do 30 minutes a day of incorporating and thinking about these things, because that's the issue really. Like, because these type of activities as I'm doing now, and other activities that are maybe even more important potentially, is that I now have I think as I've talked about, I have a document where I repeat what I've been thinking about or written down, and even what I learn. And I repeat it sort of 3 days after, well, 1 day or 3 days after, a week after, a month after, 3 months after, and hopefully even longer than that later on. But and that reminds me, that made me, like for example, it reminded me that I was very social at a point when I had done quite many of these videos. It was also the case that at a specific meeting, I was much more social than I usually are. And it was also true that I, on that particular day, was on Qualia, the nootropic that I take, and probably hadn't been on it that much, so it's somewhat on like on caffeine. The effect diminishes, so that could also be, but it could also be both effects that I was quite happy and content because I done. So sort of that, reminding myself of that, that it might be a really contributing factor that I do these videos. That thought in itself might have been forgotten if I had not been doing that repetitive schedule. So it shows the importance of that. But what was it I wanted to? Yeah, it's about this. Like sort of, even if you can get hung up on an idea that is important, I think it's really important to write it down and have a sort of schedule like that, because like some sort of way of systemizing your thoughts. Mine is not perfect at all, because I don't know how to navigate, like if there is something that I really think is important, I paste them in again if I think the repetition will be too far away, but everything accumulates, so it gets larger and larger, so I don't know how to handle that. Can't spend my whole day on previous thoughts, right? So but what I want to address here is, if you initiate, it's really about momentum, what you try to develop all the time. So sort of, if you get a thought that is constructive, that thought will have implications 10 years ahead, depending on how seriously you took the thought. If the thought is taken really serious, it will be a fundamental part of thinking, and it will be fundamental for how you act out in the world. And that's, I think, really insightful to think about. So, like these videos, if these videos have really good implications for me in the long term, then it's probably a really good thing that I did not forget to do it continuously. And I can't know that for sure, but I'm testing it. And it was something else that I thought about, and yeah, it probably connected to this, about, because I thought about initiating academic models, or part of the day that I do association between academic models, and I've had a difficult time incorporating that into my day, because it just feels as if the day runs out for me. I don't know how to sufficiently use my day. It feels as if my day is too short, really. So, and the time just goes by on trivial activities, and so it's really hard to manage your time in a good way. It always feels like the day just passes and you don't really do something constructive. It's really an issue. But so, and this repetition sort of schedule, it's been taking quite more than half an hour, but I will try to stick it to not more than half an hour every day. But it feels as if it's really important, because, as I said, initiating some new thing, like for example, writing or sort of associating ideas, academic models, is something that I want to incorporate in my life. It's been on my radar since I encountered Charlotte, which is basically 3 years ago. But just doing it like sort of strategically 1.5 hours a day is something that come back to my, I think it's been more several months, really maybe half a year, but it come back to me sort of the last week or so. I've been sort of in that area, but I figured again the importance of doing that. But there are so many things that get in the way sometimes. So, like, what's your day the my battery is not that much, but the difficulty is really to, because when I study, or when I do something like, for example, reading about academic models, I try to learn something, I really feel as if I'm forcing myself doing something, and then I'm totally lost afterwards. I don't get time to doing this I guess it's the lack of default mode thinking, but it's hard to, because the most difficult part here is that, well, one thing to do is just eliminate all the activities that disturb you, like cooking food and all those, like sort of try to minimize that, and I've done that for a long time and sort of, but still my day just disappears and I don't know what the heck I'm doing on it. It's not as if I, like for example today I was studying, but it took out the time, and I probably, since I haven't figured out perfectly how to sleep, that's something that takes time. But like I think that one of the most important things I can do for myself is this is a routine that I will start doing from today, and that is to take, this might sound quite much, but, and probably it could be argued that it's better to initiate because I want to say 1 hour each day only thinking or writing or speaking this type of video, minimum 1 hour, so that I really make a routine out of that activity, because I think it's really essential, really essential, and I haven't sort of routinized it. And I found when I've tried to be disciplined, sort of studying academic models, I cut down on those type of activities, and after I have, this is probably I have to write this down. It partly shows the importance of this conversation, of this activity, but also shows the importance of, what was it? Damn, I forgot. But it was about writing an hour each day, or something like that. Because that was the central thought. Because when I try to do something really productive, then I schedule my time. But the consequence of pushing on being more productive is that it usually, if I'm not careful, is parasitic on, or it diminishes the time that I use to contemplation and sort of world orient myself, which I'm doing right now. So that's probably, that could be a reason to why it was so good for me to, like why I was so sociable, for example, on that meeting. And so and I also think, if I'm not entirely mistaken, I also think that I did, here comes the glasses again, hope you find them beautiful. I also think that I actually wrote, I had another document that is more for journaling, but it happened to be the case that I've switched from using the journaling sort of document, but instead do daily repetitions, which is my other document for repeating thoughts and knowledge. But anyway, I use it from time to time, and I actually tried to figure out what made me, because I had a day then when I did 8 hours of the book Principles of Economics, like academic models. Sorry, I wasn't doing that. I was reading 8 hours in this book, a history book. And sort of try to get whole through whole get. I wasn't reading every. I was reading the first. I was reading the first sentence in every paragraph, and it's a book about, I think it's 1100 pages, and I read almost everything on 8 hours in that way. I don't know if the best way to read something, but it's really fascinating. I just was motivated to do that for 8 hours. What did I do that day? That's actually the question I asked myself in this document, repetition document. I asked, let's see here. I asked what was my internet history before that day. And I wrote, well, I also wrote the other, I had been allowing myself to sleep and to be rested some days after getting home from my parents, and I've been watching YouTube, and among Charlotte Munger's commencement speech and a Ask Anything about Sam Harris, although also on Qualia for the first time for a long time, but on a smaller dose. And I ask myself, is the social so damn important with YouTube? I'm thinking about Lord of the Rings or Last Kingdom last year. I also think about YouTube and the Portal, another thing I look at, and also that I watch. I'm reading now. Also that I watched a lot of Lord of the Rings and Hobbit during November, December last months, and that made me motivated. Or it's just that I was well rested, or is it both things really? That's sort of my answer to what I asked about the history, internet history, but that was my answer to why I was so motivated. And this I wrote the day before yesterday, the answer. But the important answer that I actually got now is that, let's see, I think it was Thursday, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Whoa. Shit, time goes fast. But anyway, yeah, Thursday, 3 weeks ago, I did that, and let's see. Let's see, yeah, that's the thing. I have written first time in probably 2 weeks. I wrote on my document for a while. I wrote about a page, and come to the conclusion that I actually get stuck. I want to read what I actually read here, but I'm basically arguing for how to optimize my time, basically, and but how I could optimize my day so I get more time to do what's really interesting and relevant. And I'm also quite trying to address why I am motivated to write this, which is quite. I'm probably missing the best. Not write this because writing is. But the reason that I'm writing, I don't know really, but I don't understand here that the reason that I'm getting to this type of reasoning or getting motivated during writing is because I am writing. That's really the insight here. Sorry to interrupt, but this is a really interesting. That the reason I'm get motivated, that's actually really interesting. Because I've tried to figure out something. Why am I motivated right now when I'm writing? And it's not always the answer that the motivation to write, the motivation during writing or speaking does not necessarily comes from what happened. It's not something external. The motivation comes from the process of writing or speaking. And it shows the importance of, again, this default mode. You could say contemplation. I'm not sure that default mode means speaking and writing, but I would guess it does. Because it's very integral to thinking. You can't think without speaking, really, or yeah, you can, but it's really a component. It's really correlated. Thinking and writing and thinking and speaking is really correlated. It's if you think without writing or without speaking, it's definitely default mode. But what I think they are against is just passively taking in information only, and only engaging in something, sort of doing an experiment and so forth. So yeah, I really have to write this down, that writing process, orsak. I just had to write that thought so I comprehend it, because I want to. What was the other thought? Yeah, that motivation for reading, for example, 8 hours good, but often diminishes time spent on the activity that caused the motivation. And it's obvious in some sense that if you do what you could say, if you do what you like, if you do what you're motivated to do, or not motivated, but what you think is pleasurable, then you will really, if you just do that, then you will maybe get some motivation. It's inevitable that if you do much more sort of disciplined things that are mundane and boring, maybe, but still really important, you will lose motivation. But it's not necessarily the case. It depends on what you get motivation from, and I think it often when have a lot of spare time that I start to do sort of writing or really get myself to think about stuff. So yeah, but at the same time I'm not entirely sure that that it could be that just doing something that you enjoy gives you some motivation, but it doesn't really gives you an intention. You don't know what to do, and that is the process of writing and thinking. And I've heard several times that writing about something day after day is good, and I find that to be very good. So I make points of this. Sorry for, but I just think it's so damn important. I have to write it down, and I'm writing it down in that document that I repeat every day. Sort of, so it's all the time to know why you got motivation during for writing. It was the writing itself. That's really interesting. It was something I wanted to write down. Something more. Damn, I forgot it. But yeah, maybe just write that shows importance of DM default mode. This is the default mode, going back, DM mode of thought, action, or it's not act, yeah, action. I'll actually highlight this extremely much, sort of like brutally. Yeah, anyway, I think actually that's everything I have today. It was something more actually. Yeah, I thought about, like, if you have, because this is the final thing here, when you have guilt, which I'm not sure if that's the right word, but sort of pressure of performing better. Did I write down that? Yeah, I did write that. But when you have that, it's important to know also that forcing yourself to do that or feeling bad about it is actually in itself not counterproductive, but the thing is, if you force yourself without having time to think, either just thinking or thinking by writing or thinking by speaking, if you don't give yourself time for that, you don't have a grounding and justification for the activity that you do, and you won't feel as focused. You lose sort of navigation power. Yeah, that's the word, navigation power. I will actually have to write that down too. Lose navigation, I love that word, power, if doing what, if only doing what guilt guides you to do without time for grounding yourself in the usefulness of the activity. That's really important. Yeah, I just feel so damn, I don't know what to do about these points. Yeah, I just have to find a way to get sufficient time on the day, get time to think also, and yeah. But this is sort of the central points, and the because one time when I did this, I will end on this, but I hope, one time I did this was when I had to figure out if I wanted to continue my education, and I spent sort of many days in a row, probably a week or something, and writing about trying to address my own capabilities. and my own, how well fitted I was for that environment and so forth. And I felt that it was not only illuminating for the issue, but even though I admitted that I hadn't, with the more academic models incorporated in that decision making, would have been a better decision. I don't know if it was a good or bad decision, but when reasoning about that day after day and writing many pages, I really felt grounded in my decision. I felt something about it felt really good, and I can't get away from that. So it's again shows the importance of this sort of default mode. But anyway, I have to break this now. But yeah, from my glasses to you, have a nice day.